Hey, good evening, everyone. Oh, I have to. Yeah, they're on. Good evening, everyone. This is the February 9th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting, and we have a quorum. Chana Kapanya is virtual, Dave White is absent, and the other 7 members are present here in council chambers. So with that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, public comments. Are there any comments in the audience or on Zoom? I don't see any. So we'll move on to the biennial review of the Town of Franklin financial policies. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the committee and the folks watching home. So in the packet, and for folks that want to follow along at home, if you're watching live on Franklin TV, you can go to franklinma.gov to the town calendar, Councilor Hanlon, and you can see the packet, and folks can follow along underneath the agenda. But there's a draft in the track changes draft version in the packet. I'm just going to go through the highlights, Mr. Chairman. As you know, every 2 years we try to get into a good financial practice of reviewing our financial policies every couple of years. It is a goal on the town council's agenda this year as well. The first couple comments on the first page are really a little bit more wordsmithing than anything else. You'll notice in financial reserves, number 4, we're suggesting to delete the open space $100,000 a year from free cash going into the open space stabilization fund. There's another open space policy down below we're also proposing to eliminate. And mainly there, the logic is that with the Community Preservation Act passing, there's a whole different revenue stream, and that the $100,000 a year could be used towards other items that many of the folks in the audience tonight have applied for. The other major revision is the budget stabilization policy that was approved last year by this group after some great debate. I hope that language captures, I think it's pretty accurate from the minutes, but that's the policy, which is to maintain a target floor of 2% of prior fiscal year operating revenue. Funds are for a one-time revenue source of operating budget shortfalls, and no more than 50% of the fund balance can be spent in any fiscal year. If we go all the way back to the third page, the hotel motel tax, what's on this is item 14.
Jamie, I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Item 8, enterprise accounts for water, sewer, and refuse. Then it's item 9, 10, and 11. When I read it, I got confused, but that's okay. Shouldn't the 9, 10, and 11 be A, B, C, D, or A, B, C under? Because they're basically the same thing.
We could do that.
It made it, in my mind, it would make it more readable.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yep, we can do that. So you want, just to clarify, you want 9, 10, and 11? Yeah, those are the three. Those are the three enterprise accounts.
They're really
Yep.
part of enterprise accounts
Okay.
and what you're gonna do with them.
We will, George will certainly make that adjustment. Anything else?
Not yet.
So number 14, as of now, the numbers will
Yeah.
reconfigure, but the hotel motel tax, the staff are proposing to revise this a little bit. Traditionally, for folks that don't know, we get a 6% room hotel motel tax. It's what's called a local option tax under state law. Traditionally, that revenue source, as many of you have been watching for many years know, my predecessor had a crafty way of ensuring that that revenue was dedicated towards roads and infrastructure. And the pandemic certainly has put a big hole in that. As all of you know, our hotel motel revenue dipped quite a bit. I think even 2 years ago it was down almost 75%. We are seeing a rebound of that revenue source. I did actually personally meet with all the hotel managers a few weeks ago, and they're still pretty low occupancy from where they were pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, they were about 80 to 85% occupancy, which is pretty good, especially for a town like us, which gets spillover hotel users. We're not Foxborough, we're destination, if you will. And they're really still really at 40 to 50%, depending on the hotel in town. And so what we're proposing is to actually keep that on the operating books as a local receipt, and then try to infuse as much money as we can into the operating budget for roads, because this revenue source is really not going to do a lot on its own. And given the operating budget struggles that many of you will hear in another month, we could certainly use all the revenue we can until the hotel industry decides in a few years, or hopefully people decide, travelers decide, hopefully until the hotel revenue tax comes back. So we've reflected that language change in that policy. Number 15, we've also proposing to incorporate the marijuana excise tax policy into the operating budget to support our town budget. The previous policy focused on using those revenues for capital items only. And as you'll see in a little while, at least for this year, the capital program is well-funded. But our operating budget will certainly need these revenues to help sustain core services. So we're revising that policy, or proposing to revise that policy, to allow the revenues that come from the sales tax. They call it an excise tax, but it's really just a sales tax, into the operating budget. And working with the finance director already on the budget model for FY23, we are trying to estimate out what sales will look like as we get some early reports from the 2 stores in town about what kind of revenue sales they're generating. And then finally, number 18, we're proposing to eliminate, as I mentioned before, the open space account. And just for the record, the open space stabilization fund doesn't go away. It's still there. It still has $2.5 million in it. But we're proposing the annual $100,000 contribution in light of the CPA vote.
Is there any way to take that $2.5 million, if you're not really needing it, to reprogram it elsewhere? Like,
No.
you have to leave it there?
Yep.
Try to find a match for it someday? to use
Yeah,
this?
it'll be part, I'm sure it'll be part of something. Yeah, there's no shortage of open space projects, and given the cost of land, I'm sure it'll be gobbled up quick.
Jamie, I read somewhere, and I can't find it right now, the big number from the marijuana facilities, the 300,000, the host agreements, is that annual?
Well, you asked the question at a good time. So the host community agreement is and it's noted in here to make sure, I think for whatever reason people get confused. The host community agreements are a section of state law that deals directly with the impacts from those facilities. We currently have 2 that are what I call active, meaning they're permitted, licensed by the state. They've gone through all the proper state inspections. They followed all the protocols, and that's both the Netif Grow and manufacturing facility up in Forge Park, and then their dispensary down on Grove Street, which just opened in early December, and then Boterra, which is a retail store over on the corner of Bellingham at 1256 West Central Street. By contract right now, it's about $300,000 a year, but the law actually says it can't exceed 3% of gross sales. As timing would have it, George, you might have read in the newspaper, maybe not, but you'll soon will. There's been a host of issues with the marijuana law, some smaller ones that don't relate to necessarily the broader public. And there's been some, certainly a lot of debate and on Beacon Hill about the host community agreement issue. The state doesn't review them. There was the issue in Fall River with the mayor. The former U.S. attorney was sniffing around and indicting certain towns. The town has not been at all. Our agreements are in great shape. I will note, though, the legislature is doing an omnibus cleanup bill of the marijuana law on a host of issues, not just HCA's. And so at some point, I'm going to have to actually redraft these HCA's to conform to the new law and the new guidance that the Cannabis Control Commission puts out. I have no timeline on that. They just released the bill 2 weeks ago out of the committee, so I expect a House floor or Senate floor vote probably over the next several months. So that very well could change the dynamic, George, about how those payments come in, what's the quantity of them, and what the review process is going to be at the state level.
Any other questions on the fiscal policies? Does this require any vote for us, Jamie, or just a resolution? Review.
A vote would be good, so that when we forward it off to the town council, they'll have the finance committee's recommendation.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll have to make this a roll call vote.
Well, you gotta need a motion. I move that the finance committee approve the redrafted fiscal policies for the town of Franklin as written.
Second. All in favor? Roll call vote to approve.
John?
Aye.
Tyrell?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Chenna?
Yes.
Natalie?
Aye.
Nicole is yes. George?
Yes.
And Bill?
Aye. 8-0, you sent to the council. Thank you. And the next item on the agenda, you do have the stabilization updates, we see that here.
Yep.
I don't think that needs a review. And so we're on to the FY '22 capital plan. Jamie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, for those that have been around, feels like Groundhog Day again, but the memo before everybody and in the packet on the website I mentioned earlier, just cutting right to the chase. If you read in here, the total free cash certified for this year was $4.47 million. It quite most likely is a record-breaking year and probably won't be this high again. One of the reasons for this was our departments did do a great job managing their budgets, but obviously with the pandemic over the last year, there was a lot of unspent monies in the budget that on contracts and services that were not deliverable or had supply chain problems. The good news is that we're able to provide tonight a fairly robust capital program. I'm just going to run through the list,
Sure.
and I'll go section by section, and then folks can ask questions if that's okay.
Perfect.
And we obviously have the departments here. So I hope that my chart summarizing things is pretty easy to understand. The first chart on the first page just shows the total free cash and then some of the withholdings that we do per town policy out of the gate, which is $800,000 for snow and ice removal. And in this case, this year, will also be for some SNED improvements, which I'll get into in a minute. 10%, which is the OPEB trust policy. We are not proposing $100,000 for the fire truck stabilization. The trucks are in great shape. We'll try to reconsider that again in a year or two. The field stabilization, we are suggesting and recommending the contribution on an annual basis of $150,000. And the budget stabilization fund, I'm proposing to put $1 million into the budget stabilization fund. After all those withholdings and deductions from the town policies, the remaining free cash available for the capital program is just a little bit over $2 million at $2,073,000. If folks go on to the second page, you'll see a little bit more in-depth description. Mr. Chair, as you noted a moment ago, in each of the sections, we have the stabilization fund amounts that are there. As I just mentioned, with snow and ice, we're reserving $800,000. The Farmer's Almanac said that it was going to be the snowiest February we've ever had. You know, thus far it's been okay, but we'll see how the rest of the winter goes. And then the excess funds from this will come back to appropriate at a later date, like we have in the past, usually around April, once Brutus gets in all the numbers. But a couple $100,000 of that will assuredly be promoted for improvements to the SNET trail. Some folks may know, but they may not, that we entered into an agreement and had home rule legislation passed by the legislature a couple years ago to do a land swap, so that next to the Beaver Street Recycling Center, we're trading some land with the state so that we can build a state-of-the-art recycling center up there. Also, you know, the town was basically dumping trash into the ground, and we have to line it and do a solid waste master plan. The long story short, as a condition of that land transfer, the state asked us to do a couple $100,000 of improvements to the SNET trail, which is on DCR state property, which was actually a financially advantageous proposal for the town. And we're just kind of basically getting a little impatient, so we gotta get that done, so, so we can actually swap the land. And then if you go down to the bottom of well, actually, I should just stop there right now before we go on to the departments. Is there any questions on the overall numbers?
Question on my end, and I feel like I always have questions about snow and ice.
Yep.
So basically what we're saying is that there's 1.8 held for snow. A million
That's
through the
correct.
operating budget, okay, just
Yep.
wanna make sure I was getting that right.
Yep, absolutely.
How are we doing now? Do we know?
We are at 600,000.
600.
That's what the bills that have come in.
We've been 60%.
There's probably a couple more coming from the weekend, but it'll be 52 on Saturday.
And snow on Sunday.
There's the positive TA, the grumpy highway director.
Who doesn't have to do the work, who does?
Any other questions on the stabilization funds or comments? Okay, go on
Okay.
to the departments.
So the first department up is the school department, school technology and school facilities, for a grand total of $701,000 in the proposal. The big priority this year is the superintendent and the staff, I'm sure we'll elaborate on, is curriculum investments. So we have $505,000 for math and social studies curriculum, $60,000 for school technology, $81,000 for food service equipment, and $55,000 for an eight-passenger special education vehicle. I want to note item E on here, the Horace Mann drainage issue. Some of you may be familiar with this who have been around. When Horace Mann was built, it was not built for the weather, Carlos, that we're seeing these days. Mr. D'Angelo has tried virtually every other way to fix this and redesign it. We've had a ton of engineers, different companies come in, look at it. And we went out to bid twice this year to see exactly what the cost would be for the final solution to the drainage problem. And those bids came in the fall, roughly around $350,000. And so we've added in a little bit of a contingency of $400,000 that we're going to go out and seek borrowing authority. And part of the logic with that is the Horace Mann School was a debt exclusion. So it's not absorbing any free cash or any other revenue streams from the budget. And for whatever reason, anytime you build a building that large with that much complexity, there's going to be some issues down the road. And here's the issue. So we feel it's appropriate to not use $400,000 of free cash that can be used for other things that are on the agenda and still go out while we can get a really good interest rate and go back out to bid and see what that competitive market looks like. So I just want to note very clearly that the Horace Mann drainage project on here is not using free cash. That'll be through a borrowing mechanism.
Understood. Any questions, George?
Just curious, I noticed in the 505,000, it references textbooks. We've spent a gazillion dollars on Chromebooks. This doesn't work on the Chromebook? Or is it an option?
You don't want me to answer the question.
Either one, right there was good, Sarah.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see everybody. I think there's a couple of school committee members on the call, and I'll just want to start by adding to what Carlos was saying. I think snow on Sunday is better than Monday. To answer your question about the texts, so the texts that you have listed here, and Miriam can chime in on some of the details, are for math and social studies, and a lot of our texts come with print materials. They also come with online licenses and software that runs on the Chromebooks, and so students are able to use both. Math in particular is good to have the tangibles and the visuals as well, separate and apart from having it be online in a Chromebook from a learning experience standpoint. So it really is both built into that number.
Thanks. That's-
Good evening. I'll just add that that's a 5-year subscription.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the school capital stuff? Okay, onwards and upwards.
We're good? Great. Item number 9, the town clerk, who is unavailable this evening, is just simply looking for $10,425 to purchase the voting equipment for the added 9th precinct.
And that precinct comes into play with the next election this coming fall.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Yep.
Any questions? Okay, next department.
The Facilities Department, also, unfortunately, Mr. D'Angelo wasn't available tonight, but our new Senior Center Director and Assistant Director are both here. They just started a month ago, and we're already proposing to give them $100,000 for a new pavilion. Pretty cool stuff, right? So, you know, as everybody knows, we've had a lot of transition down there. It's very exciting. I was down there for a couple months. Alicia was down with me for she was down there a little longer than me. And it gave us a great opportunity to look inside every closet, every nook and cranny down there. And one of the things that I love about seniors is they're not shy about pulling my jacket and giving me some feedback when you're walking through to get a cup of coffee. And, you know, they've certainly given us a few ideas that that are worth investing in over the next few years. But the one that really stuck out to me was just how underutilized the back courts are outside the back of the cafe, where the bocce courts are, or at least theoretically where the bocce court is. And one of the biggest complaints that's clear of why folks aren't able to use that back area and enjoy the outdoors and be able to sit outside is it's just in the afternoon, the sun comes down and beats down there, and it's extremely hot. In talking to the folks that built the building, some of these things were considered at the time, but for whatever reason, just making sure that it was affordable, they didn't go in on doing the pavilion out in the back. So through the leadership of our building commissioner and Gus Brown, he's trying to work with Tri-County. We've put together a ballpark estimate of what a pavilion would look like, and it would be a simple 4-pillar structure made of wood, and we hope to have Tri-County build it. Tri-County's been down at the Senior Center a bunch over the last couple months. They've been doing great stuff, and so we're proposing $100,000 for an outdoor pavilion on the back of the Senior Center.
Okay, on to the fire department.
And number 11, the fire department. The proposal here is for $340,822, $116,000 and change for a new fire alarm system upgrade, $122,000 and change for 2 replacement deputy chief emergency vehicles, which I will note have been in the capital plan for a couple years. So we're happy to be able to get those. And just under $92,000 for portable radios. That will be the gift that keeps on coming for the next several years. I know that they'll be in there for, I believe, another 6 or 7 years. And then the final issue is the firefighter clothing. As I noted in here, the chief and the department were able to get a grant for about $30,000 of that gear. And now here's going to be the remaining $10,000 for their clothing. The fire department's here if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for the fire?
One quick one. The portables, are they P25 capable so they can talk to the boys in blue if they have to? But they can't do now. I don't think they can now.
They do have the digital capability, so they
Okay.
have P25.
Very good, just curious. Thank you.
So the next one, Jamie, is the police department.
Yep. Police Department's $351,861 is the proposal, $337,000 and some change to request for the 5 replacement vehicles for the cruisers, and then $14,600 for the the electronic control weapons, otherwise known as tasers.
George?
A question, I actually read the detail of the cruises. It looks like they were quoted as hybrids, and then you put them back to gas, is that correct? The quote shows a credit to go back to gas, which in this day and age, I think is crazy, personal opinion.
No, I mean, I'd have to, the
It
individuals
was,
that put it together, the other thing too is we can't, some of the cars you just can't get. You know, it's what they have technically on the lot. The last car that you guys authorized and was authorized by the council last year, we got it 3 weeks ago. That's how long it
So it's a year wait.
correct.
Yeah, I'm trying to buy one
Yeah.
now, so I
Oh,
understand.
yeah. No, so I think, I think that might have been part of it too, is that we can get the gas vehicles, but the hybrids are,
I saw the change and with gas, I'm sure we don't pay it, but what is it, $3.40 a gallon now and going that way? Might be nice to save a few bucks on gas, so.
yeah.
Well, I'm gonna embarrass my predecessor. He went out and bought a hybrid vehicle, when the gas was $3.70 a gallon, and you know Jeff, he knew the numbers as well as anybody. And they went out and bought it, and then the gas went the other direction, and he overpaid for the car. So, you know, I don't know if the economics yet on electric vehicles are the obvious way.
Yeah, and they haven't really, excuse me, they're not, law enforcement agencies starting to use them, a lot of, colleges have started this and that, but there are some drawbacks to them for what we.
State
have
police
to do.
box
If we
about
run, yeah, if
200.
we run out of electric juice and we're, would rather, the gas basically is what we're always used and this and that, we don't have to worry about it.
And I would mention one more thing that Alicia can speak to if need be, but National Grid is doing an entire fleet audit for us, is that right? So we just signed up to do an analysis of our entire fleet schedule with National Grid through a credit program, it's free. And they're gonna look at all of our entire, I think it's about 170 vehicles we have in our fleet. And they're gonna go back and do an analysis on all the vehicles and kind of basically do a cost benefit of hybrid versus gas. And, like we're starting with the low-hanging fruit with some of the municipal vehicles, but that analysis will also incorporate DPW, police. And we're hopeful that maybe there's an electric Vector truck out there, we're not sure.
I did see an electric fire truck just ordered out in Arizona, fully electric. Interesting. But anyway, okay.
Jamie, do we know when to expect that?
The final report, it takes about a year for the whole process.
I had a question on the fleets.
I always add contingency onto that because everything nobody gets anything done perfectly on time these days. So I would guess probably probably a little more than a year, I'm
And
sure.
we're sitting here next year.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Sorry,
Natalie?
Nat.
My question was more on the fleets overall. Obviously, so the DPW is looking at it and maintaining all of them. Is there a year where there's like a cliff where like, okay, we have, I forgot how many you just said vehicles we have. Is there a year where it's like, okay, we need 6 overall this year, but in 2 years, we are gonna probably need 25? I'm just curious.
Traditionally, no, because most departments, and the police are a good example of that, they've got such a meticulous schedule on wear and tear. It's unlikely that you would see a big cliff year. And the departments do a pretty good job rotating them in and out, where you never really get, I'll give Brutus credit, he's unfortunately not able to attend tonight. He always asks for more than we can possibly give him, right? That's just his style, but he's not realistically thinking we're gonna ever fund it all. So he prioritizes the 3 or 4 things each year that they really need. And I think both the chief of police as well as the fire department and everybody have done a pretty good job. So to try to avoid that situation where everything just backs up and you have to buy everything in 1 year.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay. DPW.
DPW, the final, although this one's a long one, so the Public Works, proposal for $540, $25,000 for street acceptances, which all of you know are a huge priority in town. $30,000 for the Veterans Memorial restoration up at the Doughboy. $50,000 for community improvements, or downtown community improvements, excuse me. Most people love the lights, so we gotta keep the lights on. And then the vehicle list is $435,000. The John Deere loader, which is the most in need, a couple of pickup trucks with snow plows, and the sidewalk plow for $130,000. I think that's why Brutus couldn't make the meeting tonight, because the TA finally got his way. I've been asking for the snow plow for a long time because the requests for snow removal on sidewalks are just continuing to pile up, no pun intended. And so this will generate a lot of additional activity for the town. So that's the first part of the DPW. We'll get to water and sewer maybe right
Any
after.
questions on the DPW
Is
request?
the sidewalk part gonna be assigned to downtown? I had to ask.
We're gonna go right down East Central Street, across from McGurrow House and hang tie and just make sure we just go in circles
Okay, thank you.
until it goes right down to the
It worked
cement.
with Sherman Avenue a
And
few
Sherman
years
Avenue,
ago,
right.
so I'll keep going.
Somewhat related, and don't need a big discussion on it, did the council ever approve an updated downtown sidewalk policy? I know Council Pellegrini had introduced something a few years ago, and I'm not sure where that went.
Last year, the council routed that legislation to the Economic Development Committee. There was a great discussion, and at the end of the earlier in the year, they put it on hold during the pandemic to get through last year. It is a goal this year for the town council, and I expect the Economic Development Committee to take that up some point later this spring, hopefully in anticipation of next winter.
Okay, thank you. On to the enterprise accounts.
So the first up is the water enterprise. The big ticket item on here is $1.662 million for the water main replacement projects. As I note in here, that we're hopeful that the subsequent years will be paid for out of federal ARPA funds. And so hopefully that will be a bit of a stabilizing the water rate on that. And then vehicles and equipment, just one truck in here for a 4x4 pickup truck. The third item is upgrade feasibility study to the Fisher Street water treatment plant, water tank for $60,000. The design of the tank up on Hillside for just under $300. Some SCADA system upgrades, which many of you know that have been on the committee for a few years. We traditionally just keep on trying to improve the entire system. And of course, the meter replacement program, which is always quite popular to get accurate water meter rates. For a grand total of $2.347 million.
Okay. Any questions on the enterprise funds on underwater?
Jamie, I watched them build that first tank on Hillside.
From his bedroom window.
Sorry.
You have to see, nobody's paying close attention, it was built in 1888. So on to the sewer enterprise.
Through Mr. Chair, so it's $1 million proposal. It's really mainly just for general improvements to the whole system. I will acknowledge that as the federal ARPA funds continue to get dispersed and discussed, the federal treasury is redoing their rules and changing the guidance. And so various types of sewer infrastructure are now available for towns to use the money. These projects right here actually qualify for federal ARPA funds that's on this list. The town just hired a consultant to do our ARPA work for us because it's just way too much for us to absorb on the current staffing model. We have a meeting scheduled with her next week. There's a very likelihood that I'm able to apply for federal money for these projects, which then that will be our first choice. But we still want the Finance Committee and the Council to approve these expenditures in the event that that money gets stuck in bureaucracy or red tape, or they decide we can't do it, or for whatever reason. But if that money is approved and in our coffers before the end of the fiscal year, we'll come back and take off this appropriation so we can save that money for other sewer projects.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, Jamie, there's $25 million to be spent to do the sewer main, to replace that one. Is that an override, or is that gonna be absorbed in the sewer enterprise?
Let's give our water sewer superintendent some prime time television. Doug, come on up. We're going to apply for an SRF loan.
So it's,
And because we're a housing choice community, we don't have to pay the 2%, we have to do 1.5. So that will actually save quite a bit. But Doug, maybe you could just give a rough timeline on the design and the whole thing.
Yeah, so like Jamie said, we did apply for SRF funding, so that's state revolving loan funding, and they fund clean water, which is technically wastewater projects as well as drinking water projects. So we applied for that. We should hear actually probably within this month or next month if we're on the intended use plan. Once we hear about that, then we'll be able to apply for the actual loan. We're set to bid in late August for the project. Once we get bid prices, then we can apply for the loan. And we're looking at like a 2-year construction.
So, but the loan is paid out of this, or
Yep.
out of, it is?
The
So it's
loan
out
will be
of the-
paid, so once we get the final price, we get the bidding numbers, we understand the loan dynamics, what the interest is, you know, all that stuff, we'll end up just like every other project, having a pay down schedule.
And it'll be paid out of the sewer enterprise.
And it'll be paid out of the sewer enterprise fund, and then, you know, whatever the payment schedule is, we'll build it in. It'll probably be a sewer, it won't be an override, it'll be a sewer rate hike to pay for it.
Can we anticipate what that might be?
No.
No?
Way too many, it's just simply too many steps between now and then. And also, when we came for the 25 million authorization, this is about a year ago now, you know, I can't explain what the construction industry is gonna be like. We could get a better price, it could be more. I think it's all, at the end of the day, it's all hypothetical theories until the numbers are come in with the bids.
Yeah, we gotta wait until we get the bids, but through the SRF program, we do have a 0% construction loan
Yeah.
that we'll be getting. So that will help fund the construction part until a certain point when then the town's gonna be, you know, responsible for the bill. So at that point, we'll know what the hard number is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And the next list, Jamie, of things that we're not doing this year, but that are on our wish list, I guess, right?
It's my,
Okay.
it's my shock value list. of
Yeah.
All the other things that are lingering out there capital-wise. If folks wanna look at it, it's a pretty comprehensive, there's certainly a lot of stuff that's not on here, but these are the items that are there that have pretty good cost estimates with them.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, there's no further discussion, that we approve the, what's the grand total, Jamie, 2,044,000? 2,044,108 for the municipal stuff. And I think the enterprise funds came to 3,347,000. Does that sound right?
Is it on the resolutions?
Give it as
The
presented.
resolution.
What's that?
Say as presented.
Yeah. As presented then. That would be good.
Yep, as
I have my
presented.
own list.
Got it, yep.
So I'll amend that to approve what has been submitted to us for capital purchases for both the municipal and the utilities.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Will be a roll call vote.
John? Tyrell?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Jenna?
Yes.
Natalie?
Aye.
Nicole is yes. George?
Yes.
And Bill.
Aye. It passes 8-0.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And the next item on the agenda is the approval of the January 12th, 2022 minutes. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read them. Thank you, Nicole, for that. And now I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 12th.
So moved.
Roll call vote.
John?
Aye.
Tyrell?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
Jenna?
Yes.
Natalie?
Aye.
Nicole is yes. George?
Yes.
And Bill.
Aye. Passes 8-0. The next thing is a stabilization account update.
Mr. Chair, I think we put it before the quotes, which are pretty thick.
Yeah, it was at the end of the capital.
It's at the end of the capital, the stabilization fund balances, and in the capital memo.
I don't
Happy to
think
answer
we
any
need to.
questions.
Yeah, I think we've covered that. So, under future agenda items, I have a couple of things.
Okay.
One is, we've talked about maybe deep diving DPW.
It's
At
next
one
month,
point. Pardon me?
next month.
Right, so you're gonna schedule them for March?
Yeah, because Brutus just did a preview of his budget at the council a
Right.
few weeks ago, so
Right.
we're just gonna go back into the same thing.
Okay, because I was gonna suggest, I wasn't aware that you'd scheduled it, that we just combine with this budget here, but if you have a separate meeting scheduled, then
Yeah,
we'll do that.
yeah,
Okay.
for the March meeting, yep.
So that was one thing, and, make a note, is that March 9th, do you happen to know?
It's March 9th.
The second thing is, you're not gonna be here April 20th, correct?
Correct.
And there's a good chance I won't be either, so unless we schedule something, I might ask people to consider canceling it.
I think that's wise, given the fact that for a whole week you'll be here
In
and a
May.
few weeks later.
Right, right. So if there's no objection to that, we can just do that tonight, and
Sure.
Alicia can amend the calendar. So I'm seeing nods of approval on that, and I don't think it
I haven't
requires-
had any arguments about canceled meetings these days. And I'll
uh,
share my excitement after the adjournment.
And one other item, I didn't originally have this plan, but you mentioned earlier, should I mention the joint
Yes,
budget
please.
subcommittee meeting? The council approved a policy, a policy and a structure. You ran a draft by us at the last meeting, I think.
That's correct, and they did formally approve the policy, or the committee charge, excuse me, and we were able to successfully find a date, which is really hard to do these days, for March 10th. I know it's good for the counselors as well as the school committee members. So that'll be approximately 6:30,
Okay.
is my guess, or 6, we haven't figured out a time yet, it's still, 5 or 6 weeks away, but it'll be March 10th that night. So that would be for the members of the finance committee as well, who are on the budget subcommittee.
Correct. And I presume everyone knows who that is? Or would you like me to read the names?
Why don't you read the names, Bill?
Yeah, okay, it's on our roster, but, George, Nicole, Natalie, and Tyrell are all, have those as assignments on the joint,
Yep.
this new joint budget committee. Okay.
March 10th.
I'm not able to attend that night.
All right,
Is that
so,
an issue? As long as we have.
yeah, I don't think that's an
Okay.
issue. It's just more of an advisory thing, correct?
It's an advisory committee, there's no big decisions, it's really an opportunity for, hopefully, me to be able to present where the budget gap is.
Right, okay. So noted. So that's the only thing I had for a future agenda. Anybody else have any future agenda items? Not sure, nothing from China, nothing from in the chambers, so. Motion to adjourn. Seconded. And we'll do a roll call on the adjournment.
John? Tyrell? Mike?
Aye.
Jenna?
Yes.
Natalie?
Aye.
Nicole is yes. George?
Yes.
And Bill?
Aye. You've voted to adjourn, 8-0, record capital budget meeting.
Record any meeting. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
I might have